Let's give it a go here with pesticides and families. Thank you again, Bonnie. One of the core categories here, I'm going to talk about in this presentation, mostly herbicides. I think there's a little bit of an insecticide material in here, but most of this talk will refer to herbicides. Some of it's used in the ornamental lawn care game. Some of it is aquatic, and some of it is rangeland and industrial. So let's go ahead and dive in here if we can. What I'm going to probably cover mostly today is stuff that is labeled for rangeland or industrial and right-of-way. Rangeland is we talked before, usually something that a cow or a domesticated animal is going to go across and eat, although apparently there's some nuances, and whether elk count or not, or even buffalo, I suppose, may have to take it on a case by case basis. But by and large, it's a cow or if a horse is gonna go after it. Similar families of herbicides work better on certain families of weeds. Okay, that's how these folks that make these things build these things now. Okay, there was a time when they would put together a herbicidal compound and try and control as many weeds, as broad a spectrum as they possibly could. If you were making insecticides, you wanted to lay waste to anything with 6 legs on it. You tried to get as much as possible down. You wanted to last for as long as possible. The tide has changed. The attitude has shifted. Both insecticides and herbicides are now built for specific families of weeds. They have a more targeted, more prescription approach, and this has been a help to the environment. Okay, in an odd sort of way, the Mississippi River Delta in the central part of our state is now much cleaner because it's not getting the runoff of all the herbicide and insecticidal compounds that come from the farms that flow into that waterway. They're not harming as many birds. There's more birds, and consequently, I'm told that there are measurably less mosquitoes in Louisiana now. So again, a more prescription approach is where we're going with these things. Herbicides, like insecticides, have numerical labeling attached to them based on their mode of action. I don't know why group 1 is the carboxylase inhibitors, but that's what they gave it. Group 1 is the group of herbicides that are selective to grasses. Okay, clethodim is the active ingredient in tap out. Fusilade, Acclaim. These are compounds that inhibit a certain enzyme called carboxylates, which is found mostly only in grasses. I'm told that some sedges and even a few broadleaf weeds also have that enzyme, but oftentimes it's not enough to have a group 1 herbicide affect them. They're labeled for ornamental, they're labeled for nursery production. We have these things in greenhouses, and they're also used in agriculture quite a bit. Group 2 is one of the broadest ones, and this is the one that's probably of interest to everyone in the room there today. These are the ALS inhibitors, the acetolactate synthase inhibitors. That's also an enzyme that occurs in certain types of weeds, and we'll get into what those certain types are here in a minute. But the important thing is to know that these are the sulfonylureas and the imidazoliones. Okay, the sulfonylureas are your escorts. your Telars, Oust is one, Matrix is another, and there's quite a few of them that are used in agriculture. But the SUs are characterized by low use rates in terms of ounces per acre, and a very precise spectrum of weeds that they control. Almost all of them are post-emergent. Some of them have a little bit of pre-emergent activity as well. Telar will hang around in the soil for a little while. But they're reflective of this more prescription, more targeted weed family approach. The Emmys, on the other hand, are a little harsher. Polaris is a mazapyr. It's a non-selective post and pre-emergent material. Okay, it's used in some of the hard sterilants that we've sold in the past, and it's also used by itself. Okay, Plateau is a mazapic. I think a lot of us are familiar with that. It's used in rangeland restoration. It's mostly a pre-emergent, but it does have a little bit of post-emergent activity. It's grasses and annual grasses at that it controls. And then it does have some broadleaf weeds on the label that it controls as a pre-emergent, although broadleaf pre-emergent weed control is not really what a mazapic does best. It's been used mostly in cheatgrass control and things like that. Lambient is also an ALS inhibitor. Okay, it is propoxycarbamazone. It is also an ALS inhibitor. It is a post-emergent for annual grasses. It's selective. You could go across a field with Lambient at a very low use rate in terms of 1 to 2 ounces per acre, and control the young cheatgrass that has just emerged in the fall without harming a lot of the warm season grasses. The figwort family is the other family that the SUs tend to do very well on. The most prominent members of that botanical family are the toadflaxes and common mullein. And consequently, that's what Telar and Escort do very, very well on, is the toadflax post-emergent and common mullein is a post-emergent. The mustard family is also very, very susceptible to the SUs. Okay, this is your hoary cresses, your white tops, any of those types of weeds. Telar and Escort and others like it will do very well on. Okay, they also do very well on the parsley family, which is the wild carrot and the poison hemlock. They'll pick it up post-emergent very, very nicely. And again, mazapic does annual grass control pretty darn well, and until indaziflam has come out, it has been the industry standard. The group 3 herbicides, these are the DNAs, the orange stuff. Dinitroanilins is what that stands for. I cannot explain what a microtubular assembly inhibitor is. Okay, it has something to do with a certain type of seed, usually an annual grass or an annual broadleaf, has in it before it emerges. Okay, the DNAs are by and large pre-emergent annual grass and annual broadleaf weed control materials. Okay, the ones that we're familiar with are products like Surfland, which is a rhizolan, prodiamine, which is sold as Barricade, and many others. Pendimethalin, which has both ornamental and agriculture labeling on it. Trifluralin is another one. There's a lot of ways to buy a DNA family herbicide, and there's a lot of different labeling applications for them. But by and large, they are pre-emergent materials only. We've talked a lot about the phenoxys today. These are the dicambas, the 2,4-Ds, the MCPAs. These are auxin inhibitors. This is some of the oldest families of chemistries that we have. Okay, they were the first ones that were developed. In lawn care, they're often mixed with one another. They're mixed with something of the pyridine family. They're mixed with something like carfentrazone or sulfentrazone, and they make everything a lot better. Okay, this family of herbicides, because it's been around for so long and it's been used in so many different parts and places, probably has as much resistance applied to it as any other family. Okay, there are an awful lot of weeds that that this family used to control that they don't anymore, and that's phenoxys. They're still a player, although, as I said earlier in one of my other talks, dicamba's days might be numbered. Okay, it's been taken out of agriculture production. You can still use it in lawn care and things like that, but by pretty soon dicamba is going to be restricted completely and very highly regulated. One of the things that the phenoxy family does lend itself to very well is this acid formulation or this choline salt formulation. Choline salts are a very unique way of making an old product, in this case 2,4-D, and that's what Freelex is. It's a very good, much safer, much more active ingredient into the plant and less into the environment formulation. Okay, hardball is similar, but it's an acid formulation. Okay, acids are what amines and esters have to be converted to on the leaf surface before they can be absorbed by the weed. Okay, so you can use Freelex or hardball and know that you're getting more active ingredient into the weed and less into the environment. There's certainly much less volatility. There's no odor with these things. In the case of hardball, it has a full label for aquatic applications as well. Both of them can be grazed, put in hay fields. Vision is the dicamba form of acid. Okay, again, no volatility, no odor, but it is dicamba, and consequently, it'll likely go the way of the rest of the dicambas. There's a third acid formulation called Tricera, which is a triclopyr form of an acid form of triclopyr, which is a pyridine chemistry. Corteva, they are the masters of the pyridines, especially in rangeland and right-of-way weeds. And Corteva does this family very well, probably none better. These are the active ingredient that they have that they're mixing with Milestone. The Rinskor is, my understanding, also an auxin inhibitor. It's somewhere between a phenoxy and a pyridine, so it does break that resistance cycle that weeds can stay ahead of. And it's going to be very active, especially when it's mixed with something like Milestone, and do very well. As we also saw in Claire's talk, Milestone is unique in that while most of the weeds that it controls on its label are broadleaf weeds and perennial or biannual weeds at that, it also controls annual grassy weeds like cheatgrass as a pre-emergent very well. So you could go out in the late summer and fall with Milestone and achieve a pretty nice level of cheatgrass control with it. Some of the best products that we have now come by combining the auxins, a phenoxy, and a pyridine, or an SU and a pyridine, and there are more and more of these coming onto the market. trump card is one that I sell. It is fluoxapyr plus hardball, the 2,4-D acid. There is hardball and dicamba acid formulations as well. Open site is escort plus milestone. Okay. But what these folks are doing when they build these is they're broadening the spectrum of the weeds that they control. They're creating a one opportunity for their herbicides to go into a certain marketplace, and a broad one at that. It goes in rangeland and pastures, open space, right-of-ways, pretty much anything that's not ornamental for those two. And they're also keeping ahead of the herbicide resistance. Okay, now you ask yourself, and I like to do this as a salesman, is sometimes figure out how to make my own trump card tank side. Okay, and with a little math, you can often get there. It doesn't always mean you're going to save money, and it doesn't always mean you're going to get the same effect. Okay. There are certain inert ingredients, certain emulsifiers, and especially with the acid chemistries, there's certain value in buying it already in the tank, because the acid chemistries can lower the pH of the tank water very, very quickly, and you can have some problems if these emulsifiers that are not in there when you do it yourself can create some problems. The pyridines go after one family of weeds very well, and several other ones behind them. But the biggest family is the Asteraceae family, the sunflower family. This is all the knapweeds, orange hawkweed, all of the thistles, the perennial and biannual thistles. These are all in the Asteraceae family. And whether it is on turf grass or in the open space, rangeland or pasture, if a weed is in the sunflower family, there is a high degree of probability that there's a pyridine formulation that will have an effect on it. That's a pretty broad statement, but that seems to be the case, and that's what these materials do very, very well. In addition to that, the pyridines also control legumes very well. These are oxalises and clovers and black medics and the like, stuff that was traditionally harder to control in the landscape turfgrass industry, but now because of the pyridines, we do very, very well. A downside to that attribute is the concept that there's some desirable ornamental locusts that are in that family, the legume family, and the pyridines can be pretty hard on locust trees in the wrong places also. Other weeds that the pyridines pick up, curly dock and hound's tongue. If it's in the nightshade family, the pyridines probably pick it up as well. But they do these two problematic weeds post-emergent in a very good way. All right, we'll move along here. The goosefoot family. These are the weeds that are in the goosefoot family. Lamb's quarter, Russian thistle, and everybody's favorite kochia. Okay, we have problems even in turf grass now with kochia, and that's more a reflection of some of the bare spots that it was allowed to get in. But kochia is darn near everywhere. Okay, and this is the goosefoot family. I get a lot of calls, we all do, about how do I control weeds that are in the goosefoot family. My suggestion is a phenoxy and a pyridine and probably an ALS inhibitor. Okay, that family of weeds is ahead of the resistance curve, but as a post-emergent, if you have a pyridine and a phenoxy and maybe an ALS inhibitor, you're probably going to wrinkle it up a bit. Quinclorac is also an auxin herbicide. It's very unique. What it does very well are leafy spurge and field bindweed, as well as annual grasses post-emergent. Okay, most of the quinclorac that I sell goes on lawns to control either field bindweed or crabgrass as a post-emergent, but quinclorac is very, very good on leafy spurge as a post-emergent as well. And it's, again, also an auxin inhibitor. It's kind of partway between a 4 and a 5 on the numbering system. Groups 5, 6, and 7 are very, very closely related in their mode of action. They are photosystem inhibitors, okay? They're some of the older chemistries. We know them as atrazine, simazine, bromacil, diuron, and spike. These are all still labeled, most of them for agriculture and bare ground applications. Spike is unique in that you can buy it as a pellet, throw it down on sagebrush and things like that. But diuron and bromacil are still players in the bare ground industry. And whether they're in groups 5, 6, or 7, they're all photosystem inhibitors. This group is characterized by the high KSC values and low solubility. Okay, that means it stays where it's put mostly. But if anything is going to stay there, it's going to be one of these materials. I think I had this slide up in one of my earlier talks, but it's a good one. I told you that dicamba had a pretty bad year, and the prospect for improvement is not terribly high either. Glyphosate had probably a worse year in terms of public perception and attitude. I happen to think that it's still a very significant player in the herbicide game. It's going to be a part of our professional lives as long as we're all in them. It's very unique. It's the only material that has its mode of action. It's a group 9 EPSP inhibitor. That's a type of enzyme. Okay, but it's the only material that is in that particular mode of action is that active ingredient. Because it's the only one and because it's been used, has also led to a whole lot of resistance that we're aware of. The next man up, glufosinate is a group 10 herbicide, is its mode of action. This is a glutamine synthase inhibitor. Very similar enzyme, but different enough that if you rotated between a group 9 and a group 10, the propensity for resistance would be pretty low. Phenale is one of the forms that is sold. Another more popular one is called Cheetah Pro. The thing about glufosinate is there are products labeled that go everywhere that glyphosate does, except for the water, okay? We do have aquatic labeled glyphosates around, but we don't have a aquatic labeled glufosinate as of yet. There are no significant members of groups 11, 12, or 13, so the next one up is a group 14. Okay, these are protox inhibitors, PPO inhibitors. There's a whole lot of these around. Some of them are post-emergent, some of them are pre-emergent, and some of them are some of both. Okay, the significant compounds in our world are carfentrazone, which is sold as AIM in the agriculture world, and quicksilver in the ornamental world. And then it's also mixed with some 3- and 4-way compounds to make up products like Speed Zone. Okay, carfentrazone has a sister, a cousin compound called sulfentrazone, and it is sold as Antares. That goes in range and pasture, open space, as well as turf. It is, again, as well as bare ground, and it is, again, sulfentrazone all by itself. Flumioxazine, which you can buy as SureGuard or Payload, goes a lot of different places, ornamental, rangeland. It has aquatic allowances on some of the formulations. About the only place it does not go is some place that's going to be grazed or hayed. Doesn't have that allowance yet, but it's also used in bare ground. But again, we have pre-emergent, we have post-emergent. Defender, the material that I spoke of in my turf talk, is a group 14 protox inhibitor, and it is both pre and post-emergent. Although its pre-emergent activity is limited pretty much to just dandelion seeds. Very unique product. Group 17 are the organic arsenicals. Okay, we don't know just how they do it. We're not sure about their mode of action, but the significant compound in this group is MSMA. Okay, sold as Bueno or Target 6. It's used in agriculture. It's used in ornamentals. It's a post-emergent. It's very good on goat heads. It's where most of the MSA goes that I sell. Group 20 are the nitriles. The only significant compound in that group is diclofenyl, which is sold as Casaron or Barrier. It has a very broad label from bare ground to under pavement to ornamental landscapes, but it is a pre-emergent only, and a very good one at that. Group 22 are the bipyridilums. This is diquat and gramoxone, okay, paraquat. They are cell wall destroyers, okay? They're very localized. They hit a cell wall, they blow it apart, and that's about as far as they go. But they're very fast acting. They're used in agriculture. They're used in industrial application. Tribune, which is the diquat that I sell, has an aquatic allowance, so it can go in water with no irrigation or drinking or watering restrictions behind it. Group 26 is a carboxylic acid. This is also one of the next choices if you can't use glyphosate. Its mode of action isn't completely known either. It's made up of fatty acids, and there's speculation. Basically, how it works is it will blow the cell walls apart completely. Okay, what isn't known is how it translates or translocates between cells, but its level of systemic activity isn't a lot, frankly. It's a non-selective, post-emergent burn down material. It's a very nice label. It goes about everywhere that Roundup does go. Also, again, but except in the water. Scythe doesn't have an aquatic allowance. Group 27. This one is real unique. These are the HPPD inhibitors. Okay, this is the material that has the propensity to turn the weeds white, and that picture is one of the best ones that I've seen of how this stuff works. That is what a tenacity looks like on a lawn about 2 weeks after you spray it. Okay, HPPD is an enzyme that is involved in chlorophyll production. So if the plant cannot produce chlorophyll, it tends to bleach out and look white. Okay, and that's the effect that you have on it. It has some post-emergent activity on broadleaf weeds as well as some annual weeds. Tenacity is used to pick up crabgrass and certain foxtails in lawns selectively when it's gotten through your pre-emergent application. Tenacity is your backup plan. It can go underneath trees. It's very safe. It's very clean. It's also characterized by low use rates. Okay, this is also in terms of ounces per acre. Okay, frequency, or also sold as Pilex, is also an HPPD inhibitor. Frequency is the one that would go on a non-crop area, open space, or it's even used in bare ground. Okay, frequency does not have a grazing allowance. We've been told for quite a while that it will have an aquatic allowance at some point. We haven't seen that happen yet, but Pilex is the ornamental version of it. You would spray Pilex on a lawn, and you get some pre-emergent activity as well as some post-emergent activity. Both frequency and tenacity are pretty unique in that you can go back and drill seed or broadcast seed in an ornamental site nearly the next day. Okay, it's very, both of them are very selective in the weeds and the seeds that they control, to the point that spray today and drill in bluegrass or perennial rye next week is a very real management option. Okay. Pilex is used in golf courses in the transition zone, where they have to spray out the Bermuda grass and bring in the ryegrass at certain times of the year to keep the course looking green in places like Arizona and Texas, places like that. But tenacity, frequency, topramazone and mesotrone are the two active ingredients, and they are the two most significant members of group 27. Group 29 belongs to indaziflam in all its many forms. It is a cellulose biosynthesis inhibitor. Very new concept, very clean chemistry. I'm sure if you've been in the weed control game for any length of time, you're becoming more aware of what this material can do. It's very active as a pre-emergent on a whole host of rangeland weeds, whether it's grasses, whether it's broadleafs. This stuff can get it done. Esplanade is the premium one of that group. It is also sold other ways. Marengo is sold in the greenhouse and nursery market. Spectacle is sold in the ornamental bed pre-emergent control market. And then now we have Rejuvera, and Derek has talked a lot about Rejuvera. It's Esplanade with a grazing allowance, but they are all indaziflam and all the same amount of indaziflam. Okay, they're very active as a pre-emergent. You can seed within certain regimes very soon afterwards. And this is a group 29, the only member of that group that's in that class of chemistry. Also in the what's new department, Duracor is a combination of Milestone and Rinskor. This is also a synthetic auxin herbicide for range and pasture. It's a little bit Milestone and a little bit Rinskor. It makes the Milestone better. We heard Claire tell us that it's actually increased the spectrum of weeds that it controls. They can pick up the mustards very well, and it also is very active on leafy spurge. Right now, it does not have a turf and ornamental allowance, but it goes everywhere that a horse does, or that your hay cutter does later in the season. That's it. What's in the what's new department, and that's what I have for pesticides and families. And I'll certainly do my best with any questions if we have any.
Cool, thank you. You guys have any questions? Oh, in the back. Hang on.
Yeah.
I'm going. Checking.
Really close. Helena has two products, Dynamic and Hellfire.
Yeah.
What do you recommend, and what are they? Are they certain groups that they work better with?
Dynamic is a combination silicone MSO surfactant. It works best with the sulfonylureas and anything that has a harder to wet leaf surface. Okay. It works best with the sulfonylureas because of the lower use rate of the sulfonylureas. Okay. It's going to spread the material out over the leaf surface a little easier. It has what's called translaminar activity. What that means is instead of having the material drop off the edge of the leaf, it will pull it underneath the leaf. And so it will be absorbed from both the top and the bottom into the air spaces. Dynamic is one of my favorite surfactants to sell. Okay, I think it is a difference maker when it comes to spraying things like toad flaxes, the mullins, anything that has been dried and is moisture stressed, such as the kochia or the Russian thistle that was out and is now 4 feet tall and hasn't seen a raindrop in a couple of weeks. I think Dynamic is going to make a difference. Okay, Hellfire is a herbicide activator and buffering agent. Okay, so what Hellfire will do when you put it in the tank is it will lower the pH, which makes it better for phenoxys, glyphosates, and imazapyr. Okay, keep that in mind. A lot of herbicides work better at lower pHs, except for carfentrazone and sulfentrazone, Escort and Telar. Okay, don't want a low pH for those compounds. We want to lower the pH for the phenoxys, the pyridines as well, glyphosate, and things like Polaris. So Hellfire will lower the pH, and it's got a material that's going to activate the herbicide, pull it into the leaf surface a little easier. On my turf talk, I talked about the material called octane. Octane is a heat up material that is similar to what the other half of Hellfire is. Okay, so Hellfire is going to heat up the herbicide that you're putting in there and also lower the pH. You'll see a lot better glyphosate performance with Hellfire in the tank. Okay. We also have another one, a three-way one called Smoke, and which is kind of an odd name for something to bring to market in Colorado, I've always thought, but that's the name of the product is Smoke. But it is also a buffering agent, a herbicide activator, and then it will reduce the fines and mists at your spray. It's called a deposition agent. So it's essentially a three-way surfactant. It's Hellfire plus one. Does that help?
So Rick, do you think we should be testing our pH in our water? Because I have been doing that.
I'm thinking we probably should. And this is something that I probably would not have known 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, but we're now finding out that higher pHs, anything 7 and above, is going to have an effect and a detrimental effect on some of our herbicidal compounds. Okay, again, you don't want to lower the pH for Escort or Telar, carfentrazone or sulfentrazone. But pretty much anything else is going to benefit from being down around 6 or below. Okay. Here in Denver last winter, the Denver water, now again, I appreciate that it's probably not affecting anybody in the room there, but Denver water came out and is intentionally raising the pH of the tap water to all their customers. This is to save on the corrosion of the pipes and the infrastructure, and they're doing it for a lot of the right reasons. But that raising of the pH is really having an effect on particularly the post-emergent herbicides and some of the insecticides that we're spraying here in Denver. Okay, now extrapolate that to the southwest part of the state, I think that by and large, we should probably be more aware of the tank water than we probably have been in the past. Yes.
Hey, Rick, do you have your contact information for these guys?
I don't have it on. I don't have it on a slide, but I'll certainly pass it on around here if it's appropriate. My cell phone number is 303-748-3109. And the email, like everyone else at Helena, is our last name and our first initial. My last name is spelled ROEHM, and then the first initial R, at helenaagra.com, AGRI.com.
He's my go-to man. I'm always asking him for herbicide advice if I have a specific weed in a specific area. So he's a great guy to get into contact with.
You're very kind, Bonnie, and I appreciate the opportunities. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you again. Take care.
I'm going to find Nina.